Every Premier League club has had that one signing, the player you wonder how on earth made it through the door. The ones who were supposed to be legends but ended up, well, let's just say famous for all the wrong reasons. Today we're diving into the absolute worst signings in Premier League history. One club at a time. Arsenal, I'm choosing Shkodran Mustafi. He was perceived as poor due to his error-prone defending, including costly mistakes and lapses in concentration, as well as a tendency to act on instinct rather than anticipation. His $35 million transfer fee was considered too high given his inconsistent performance and lack of reliability. At times, he lacked basic communication and understanding with his teammates and the goalkeeper, which contributed to defensive breakdowns. Even sometimes blamed his teammates for his own mistakes, which further damaged his image and relationship with supporters. For Aston Villa, I've chosen Peter Enckelman. The lanky goalkeeper was responsible for quite a few clangers over the course of 5 years with Villa, but none were more infamous than the own goal he scored against Birmingham City when he completely failed to control a routine throw-in and somehow allowed the ball to squirm into the net under precisely zero pressure. That was probably the worst mistake of his career. But there were plenty more. Calamity seemed to follow wherever he went. Jordan Ibe was considered a disappointment at Bournemouth primarily due to a lack of consistent performance and failure to fulfill his high potential after a $15 million move from Liverpool in 2016. Over nearly 4 years at the club, Ibe only managed to score 5 goals, which is a very low return for a winger at that price point. Nick Proschwitz's time at Brentford in the 2014 to 2015 season could be considered disappointing, particularly given his previous goal-scoring record in Germany and a loan spell at Barnsley. In essence, a combination of fitness issues and a failure to consistently perform at the required level contributed to Proschwitz's struggles at Brentford, eventually leading to his departure. Brighton made a rare mistake in the transfer market by paying a premium price for PSV Eindhoven's Jurgen Locadia. He became known as a flop and one of the worst value signings for Brighton, a view reinforced by his lack of goals. Fans and the club's management saw him as a disappointing signing and a prime example of a poor value transfer. In August 2018, Burnley made a club record £15 million move to sign central defender Ben Gibson from Middlesbrough. However, his time at Turf Moor was nothing short of disastrous. Gibson made just one Premier League appearance, scoring an own goal in a 5-1 defeat to Everton. He spent most of his tenure training away from the first team and later described his time at Burnley as a disaster. Winston Bogarde signed a 4-year contract worth $40,000 a week with Chelsea after joining from Barcelona in 2000. However, he only made 12 competitive appearances for the club, meaning Chelsea paid him a substantial sum for almost no playing time. Despite the club's attempts to offload him and the new manager freezing him out, Bogarde refused to take a pay cut or a loan deal. He chose to stay and collect his wages for the entire duration of his contract. Undoubtedly the worst Palace signing of all time, Alexander Sørloth. He played 16 league games across 2 seasons with the club, failing to score a single goal. The club thought they were buying a promising young forward who could potentially lead their front line for years to come. Instead, they got a player who didn't hit the back of the net once and was gone within 2.5 years. Brett Angel is often remembered as one of Everton's less successful signings. In one match, he missed a header and spent his time on his hands and knees in the penalty area Velma style, looking for his contact lenses. Kostas Mitroglou is Fulham's most disastrous signing. He made only 3 appearances, failed to score, and was largely absent due to fitness problems. After a spell on loan, they eventually sold the forward to Benfica for a £5 million loss. Jean-Kevin Augustin, the worst singing Leeds United made during Bielsa's tenure as manager, and to call it the worst transfer in the club's history. The reason this deal was even signed off in the first place was that the club needed a backup striker once Nketiah was recalled. Leeds have had to pay $40 million for a player who made just 3 substitute appearances for them, totaling 48 minutes, which has to make this one of the worst transfers in English football history. Sean Dundee. Liverpool really would have been better off signing Crocodile Dundee. He only played a total of 55 minutes for Liverpool, a figure that became legendary for his brevity. His struggles with fitness and a quick succession of injuries and managerial changes at Liverpool prevented him from having any meaningful impact, cementing his reputation as a major transfer flop. Wilfried Bony never came close to justifying the $25 million fee Manchester City paid for his services. 6 goals in 36 Premier League appearances represented a meager return across his season and a half at City. He was eventually sold back to Swansea for less than half the fee City had paid the Welsh club. Bebe, arguably the most bizarre and worst signing made during the Ferguson era at United. He was signed for $7 million, with Fergie admitting to never seeing him play. Bebe was terrible and made 7 appearances in his first season before being shipped out on loan before they could offload him to Benfica in 2014. Jean-Alain Boumsong, a transfer so strange it became the subject of a football corruption inquiry. The French centre-back had joined Rangers on a free transfer just months before. Newcastle paid $8 million to the Scottish side for his services. Boumsong's inconsistent performances would make him a cult figure among Newcastle supporters. Notoriously error-prone, Boumsong moved to Juventus in Serie B for $3.3 million just 6 months into his 5.5-year Newcastle contract. After just 8 appearances for the club, Jonjo Shelvey was dropped for poor performance. This led to a fallout with manager Steve Cooper, after which Shelvey never played for the club again. The England international left to join Turkish side Çaykur Rizespor on a free transfer just months after signing for Forest. Jack Rodwell signed in 2014 from Manchester City for about $10 million. His time on Wearside was notorious. Not only did he make minimal impact on the pitch, but he also famously escaped a wage reduction clause during relegation, making him a financial burden rather than an asset. Former player Marco Gabbiadini even called Rodwell the worst mistake the club has made. Grzegorz Rasiak's 2005 signing stands as the most puzzling piece in Tottenham's transfer history. A goalless spell across 8 appearances leaves Rasiak's chapter as a question mark in White Hart Lane's rich tapestry. The Polish striker never seemed to find his footing, and his time at Spurs was frustratingly brief. Roberto Jimenez signed as a backup for Łukasz Fabianski. The Spaniard found himself pressed into service for 8 inglorious games in 2019 and played so badly that third-choice David Martin was promoted in his stead. Roberto was at fault for goals against Everton, Sheffield United, and Newcastle United, but his worst moment came against Burnley when he contrived to punch a cross into his own net, one of the worst goalkeeping stints of the Premier League era. Fabio Silva has been a failure at Wolves since he joined the club. The striker signed for Wolves under Nuno for a club record fee of $35 million. It was believed that the youngster had a lot of potential, yet this has never shown on the pitch. Silva has now worked under 4 different Wolves managers, but has never reached the heights expected of him. And there you have it, the Premier League's Hall of Shame. Millions spent, promises made, and in return, own goals, injuries, and about 3 good highlights on YouTube. Smash that like button, drop your club's biggest flop in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.